Welcome everybody to the first Google Unthink Community Hangout that we're trying with our community today. Let me introduce you to our participants. First, let me introduce myself. It's Alex Matthews. I run the EMEA technical teams with our partners. I would like to hand over to Ashish to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Ashish. I actually lead the digital analytics and transformation practice within Cognizant for Europe.
Thank you very much, Ashish. Guy.
My name's Guy Ratcliffe. I head up all of the offering development and technical development within our EMEA organization in Fujitsu.
Thank you, Guy. And Paul.
Hey guys, my name is Paul McSharry. I'm an independent VMware consultant, VCDX and VCI.
Thanks very much, Paul. So the subject of this Google Hangout is digital transformation and cloud adoption. It's a big subject, but it's something that's really topical for our customers and for our partners. With that in mind, let's just discuss what digital transformation means to us. Guys, you've got really different perspectives on the world and digital transformation and the cloud adoption area. What does digital transformation really mean for your customers? Let's start with Ashish.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alex. As you would know, and everybody else, that digital transformation can mean very differently for different people in different side, of the organizations. On the client side, be it on the partner side or developers or anybody else for that matter. What I personally actually look after into is when a customer is looking for a digital transformation, how they can drive business value from their technical implementations, be it cloud, what kind of cloud, how you can fast track them into the journey of insights or business decision making made easy. So I think that's the area where I focus on. But as I said, it can be various. There are several components in cloud adoption vis-a-vis digital transformation. A lot of organizations say if you're embarking on a digital transformation journey, then without cloud adoption as a first step, you can't barely start. So it is actually again one way of thought process to look into it. There are organizations which look from the other side of the angle. They look at analytics or insights, and then they see what are the things which we can move into cloud, be it in a private cloud, in a hybrid cloud, or what will make sense. So again, there are several flavors to it, and we can obviously discuss along today how it helps our customers in what way, form, and size.
Thanks, Ashish. So, Guy, from your perspective, how do you see digital transformation impacting your customers? Is there a clear understanding of what digital transformation means?
I think it depends on the maturity of the customer. Many of our customers, depending on the maturity that they're looking at in terms of the assets and the capabilities they have as a business, how they can then leverage those assets and capabilities in order to look at both new markets as well as look at the other new upstarts in the markets and how they're actually changing the way things are happening. So for us, digital transformation is really about how to leverage the assets that you both have as well as the infrastructures that you now can use, such as cloud, in order to actually build those capabilities going forward from a business perspective.
Thanks, Guy. That's a good point. Paul, what do you see working with some of your customers?
I think at the moment, so I range from working with the operations team direct to also talking to various high-level partners. And I think the ultimate need is to get the application in the convenient way possible while maintaining the security. And I think that's some of the key drivers, is that when it comes down to it, whether it's on-premise or off-premises, it's getting the application. And I think leading the way to maintain that quality is the hardest driver for everybody.
I think that's a really good point, Paul, and that kind of ties into what Guy was saying earlier in terms of maturity elements. And Ashish, I think your approach in terms of how can they adopt it is really quite important as well. What kind of ratios do you see when a company does successfully transform? In terms of the people, the process, the technology? Is there a golden rule that exists for customers who who have successfully changed?
I would actually say to you, it depends what you call transform. So again, the maturity of our customers, some of them saying, you know, I'm going to transform, or just kind of almost looking at a lift and shift workload of things into the cloud, which is not necessarily cost effective, you know, if you're running it in that way. And you're not necessarily getting the best advantages out of the capability that those platforms actually give you, being things like cloud native, but any other of the supporting elements that are sort of around that. So transform is a very large subject in it, almost in itself, in the way you actually move to that. And each one of those different steps, I think you'll find, you know, we found that most of our customers are actually in multiple places, depending on the different applications and where those applications sit. It depends on the data residency and data issues they may have. So some of them may be sitting and saying, well, actually, there's certain amounts of what I have here just doesn't make sense me moving. It needs to kind of stay put. It's, you know, it's got a return of investment that you're not going to move and you're not going to transform it. But what you'll be looking at is building around those applications and around that, you know, capability that you have there, and then starting to leverage those clouds and kind of native cloud capabilities.
So I was about to say that, you know, yes, people, processes, you know, comes first, and, you know, transformation, as, you know, yeah, rightly pointed out, it's a big subject in itself. It depends on, you know, in country, in various countries, regions, how the, you know, organization is spread out. For most of our global customers, they would like to, you know, embrace cloud in different ways. And then there are, again, applications, different applications behave in a different way on the cloud. You know, be it Adobe or Salesforce or anything else for that matter. So it again, you know, how your organization is set up for that. I think business processes and people are more important. And then you take it forward in what makes sense, native, non-native, customer facing, or, you know, backend kind of applications. What can be moved first for, you know, ROI and, you know, cost benefits.
Thanks, Ashish. So moving on to security, do you see that the security requirements for cloud are increasing, or with cloud being so prevalent, do you see a general adoption of cloud as a security-friendly environment these days?
There's almost seems to be a run to get as many security kind of certifications that are sitting out there, or accreditations from a cloud provider's perspective. I think it's really important for any customer to do their own due diligence within that, to understand what those providers can actually, you know, what the service can actually, you know, is, or what it can provide, rather than necessarily, you know, those kind of certifications and accreditations that are in place.
I think that's a key point, that when you bring an application, especially early in the transformation, when you move an application out there, and maybe it's their first large prod app, the teams around all the processes kind of take for granted originally that their applications are on their site, their data's safe within their platform, and not having the capability that the security team may need to be able to say, is the X, Y, and Z partner doing exactly what they need to, should do, and how do they keep up to date with the threats that are out there anyway. And it should be really seen as a partnership, not only with the cloud provider, not watching from a user, but also partnering together to try and fight any of these risks. I think that's a key point at the moment.
In addition to that, I think the security realms also go into the area of, you know, legal entities within the organizations. You know, what are the impacts on those applications on the business side, in B2B space, to their end customers or their own customers. So I think security should be looking at a holistic level, both from a technical side as well as from a business side. And I think technically we are there with certifications and all. Business side is, again, you know, people dabble into it once they get into it. So I think it is again an afterthought. However, it should be a, you know, a prerequisite as well.
Agreed.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What about GDPR? Are you seeing an increased awareness for GDPR and the potential impact that has for the European Union services? Do we see GDPR as actually recognized by our customers as an issue that they need to care about these days?
Yes.
And do do they know about it, or do we have to educate them? Where do you think the maturity is in GDPR? Considering GDPR comes in May, it's not long to go.
It's difficult to talk about GDPR because I don't think we know what the impact is actually going to be. I think we looked at, there's lots of things that you can, and projects that are in place in order for both customers and suppliers, etc., to become compliant. But what is the actual impact on the business? I think is the one question that I have as a big one. Just take an old world backup, right? An old tape backup. How are you going to take that backup that you've had for the last X number of years that's sitting in a bunker somewhere, bring it back and pull out a specific element of that backup, of that user data, and remove it, in terms of right to be forgotten, for example? That is really difficult, and the impact on that and how we may have to restructure things going forward from an IT perspective, I think is pretty interesting. And I don't think I haven't seen anyone that, in my view, has an answer here. Happy to be corrected, but
I agree. I don't think there's much out there to actually look at the definitions yet and how that will impact the operational processes. I think, especially if you're looking at a hybrid platform, what does it actually apply to, and how do you handle the data in and out of that platform? I think that's going to be a serious transition going forward.
Yes.
I think you guys are right. And Guy, your tape backup example is really good. I don't think any of it thought about in terms of the wider implications. Right. Do you think that even the new online services are GDPR aware? If you forget about the old stuff and the existing data centers, but if a new cloud service was being sought after by a customer, do you think even the customer is GDPR aware at this stage, or we need to, again, educate them as part of that bigger picture before they even purchase it?
Many of those applications have been designed in such a way that their focus is actually on tracking user data anyway. Because of, I think, the newer technology is not necessarily in the enterprise space. So I think many of those, the capabilities there, whether they're actually going to use that in order to extract some of that data, and the ability to do that is a big question. I think from an enterprise perspective, that's very different, because it doesn't have that same focus in terms of the way that applications have been created. And from a user perspective, using Google Hangouts, for example, there's a focus on the usability of that individual, and being able to extract that data, I think, may be easier. But I think in the enterprise space, that's not necessarily the case. In the enterprise space, it's focused on the business value for that business and how we can actually move that to places, how we can actually essentially increase the bottom line and leverage that. How is that going to be used within the GDPR? I think is quite a difficult thing.
I think that's a good point. On the data question, that kind of opens up the whole topic of data ownership. If you think about a lot of these cloud services, the aggregation of its data in particular, let alone IoT, the whole data question becomes really quite important. Where do you think the customers stand on the whole data ownership area? Do you think customers understand that data may or may not be their property anymore?
Yeah, I think customers are getting aware of this, that they have to live with the GDPR, and there are implications. But to your earlier point, the knowledge sessions, all organizations are gearing up to get themselves more and more knowledgeable in this space. And as Guy rightly pointed out, it is something unknown. Unless we hit it, we will not be able to gauge the impact. But yes, I think there is more awareness to it for sure, and processes or people are taking steps towards how to mitigate those. That definitely I can see.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's been up until now there's been a bit of a balancing act. So like Guy mentioned about the about bringing forward your business. People go to the cloud for a service of some kind, and do you meet the minimum requirements for whatever your business says to try and do something as quickly as possible, which is what the whole purpose of cloud is, to actually deploy things in a cost-effective but also ability regardless of site. And then we have elements that are ultimately, they are technically going to slow down the actual approach. So what's the balancing act to actually do that? Now something's coming in that says there's actually penalties associated with that. That could be a different way of thinking.
But from a compliancy angle, we kind of summarize that GDPR is a topic that customers understand, and it's growing in awareness. But the consumption of data to do more from a business perspective, are customers jumping on the bandwagon of data consumption?
I think, again, it depends on the maturity of the clients, where they are in their journey. Yes, I think they are aware of, and they are trying to consume more and more data getting generated through in different sources within their own ecosystem. At least they're aware of that they should be using it, and then they are trying to work their way out. I would actually put it in that way. But again, it depends on the maturity level. Retailers probably are using it, say 60%, banks say 70%, for example. Right, and of course, Amazons and eBays of this world use 100%.
It's about understanding what data they actually, where the customer actually knows the data they have at the end of the day. There's only a certain amount, I can't remember the stats off my head, but there's only certain amounts of data that we use and consume and actually recreate on an ongoing basis. How many businesses sit there and recreate things because they can't find the relevant data or it's not easily accessible. So I think that's going to be very difficult, because you may find something that you think is relevant, that has to be protected or anything like that. But in actual fact, it's like a spider's web of actually there's a bunch of other things out there that actually been created or recreated in terms of numbers of versions of in different ways, and making sure that you can collapse all that down is quite difficult. I think the whole data area, in terms of understanding it, knowing it, and using it, especially unstructured data, it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for everyone, but there's a lot of difficulties in it as well.
I agree, Guy, and I would postulate that it would be a very small percentage of our customers who truly understand what data they've got access to today, and the business decisions they could make if only they analyze that data that they've got access to. Is that kind of what you see as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think being able to understand what that is and being able to use it to your benefit as a business and relearn from your learn from your mistakes. How many times do we as businesses, probably our own businesses as well, make the same mistakes because we don't have that intelligence to hand, and that's key in being able to put that in place, I think.
So from an access to the data, customers don't know what they've got. They probably, by definition, then don't know what to analyze. Are we talking really of another class of service to do that analytics for them? And does that naturally lead back to the cloud in terms of somewhere to run that analytics as a platform?
See, there are a whole bunch of data discovery, MDM, all these kind of things, 360-degree view, big data, which will eventually lead into, obviously cloud as such, because the backbone is on the cloud. So a lot of organizations I see, they are building solutions around this area, powered through machine learning and artificial intelligence. All of them almost is on big data. So it is on cloud, in other words. So yes, there is a direct correlation there. I think what I see in the marketplace is organizations to fulfill these gaps of data, they're trying to move towards cloud, and especially on the big data side, so that they can at least see what they have and what they can do, and then figure out the next steps. I think that's what I think most of the organizations are trying to get towards.
That makes sense, Ashish. So if they're going to have to adopt big data, and that probably means a cloud service of some description, does that then tie back to the security issues? Some of the inferences you can make from this data are going to be company making or company destroying. does that mean that we need a much tighter security mechanism? And GDPR may be able to support some of that, but inherently the security of that data is going to become what my business is in the future.
Absolutely.
I actually think it's a blend. Yes, we can use cloud, some of the cloud services because of what it can actually do in terms of for example, serverless functions and that sort of thing, where we can actually look at how we can leverage the services out there in a rapid way in order to provide us the intelligence and the capability back. But I also think that there's a huge amount of data out there that customers have that they will never, ever want to put into a cloud infrastructure. So I really do, I have this kind of paradigm that we're working with in my organization around what we're calling hybrid data. And it is about that. It's about how we can, what do we know, where it is, if we, how can we secure it? And that's critical. I mean, you just look at the number of hacks, etc., that have happened, and the floor, security, things that are in the marketplace at the moment in terms of, and that means, that could be private as well as public in the way that that's stored. I think putting the intelligence, the security around it, and also making sure where that is, it's really key and quite important. So using the tools where they're most relevant and applying them to the data, but making sure that you can apply it in data in both private and public instances.
I think Guy's comment about data that never wants to leave the premises is a key point there. I think having a piece of data which I would never want off-site or would want to have full knowledge of who accesses it down to the nth degree, is that cloud native, is that cloud-like? Especially if I'm going to start having a transformation project that says I'm now going cloud first. How does that impact me going forward with that specific data? Is that my bottleneck? Is that my rate determining step? Or is that something that's going to stop? Especially with with the attacks that you can go left, right, or east, west from your north-south point, it just becomes that could stop me from using any service of any kind whatsoever in a certain business stream, which can then have a knock-on effect to my whole adoption.
Right. So see, the way I think here is a little bit differently. I think the way organizations are trying to tackle this problem is, I think a business use case driven kind of scenarios has been built, associated data models and data architectures in place, and associated data lineages can be tracked accordingly. I think that's the way you can actually move into cloud if you actually join all these dots, and instead of rushing and moving most of the stuff, say on the cloud, you make a business case, define a business problem, and then basically connect all IT systems associated with it, along with data and data related issues, and then you move them. For unstructured data, I would say the way organizations are dealing with this is, you actually anonymize it, create a kind of a persona, or kind of persona profiles, and a lot of solutions are available in the marketplace where you can do data, you can prepare personas of prospects, and based on your original data, where you may not need to use your original data. Then via analytics you can actually anonymize them and de-anonymize them. So there are again ways to work around it, along with security and privacy issues, working with the cloud.
It's interesting that all three of you are sharing the perspective that the data and by association the algorithms are going to become more important to our customers' businesses. Therefore, the security around that is paramount, and that would probably mean that there will be less inclination to use cloud services to host some of that, so that the keys to the kingdom aren't being lost. Is that a fair summary?
So I wouldn't say it reduces the adoption of cloud capability. What we're trying to do with using those platforms is leveraging the capabilities in those platforms in order to essentially work with data and business process to provide better outcomes for a business. So you can't do that because otherwise you are hamstringing yourselves. And I think I see that I've seen that with a number of companies that don't necessarily think, they think in a very infrastructure as a service way, for example. They're not thinking about real digital transformation. And if you think in that way, then you will want to keep, you know, everything in the castle and not let anything out. But I think, and that's why, you know, I talked about the kind of the hybrid thought, because you know, putting the right controls in place, doesn't matter where the data is key. Putting the right security controls in, the right access, the anonymizing of data where it's needed or not needed, is, you know, pretty key. And that really, you know, goes to understanding. Number one, understanding what you have is pretty, you know, is so important. And then using the applicable data in the right context when you're building these services from an, you know, for that new application or the new way you want to take something to market. And I think that's what we've seen. We've seen most customers focusing on that business view and saying, right, well, what is the outcomes we need? And then put the correct controls around the services and the data and everything else in order to both secure that, leverage it correctly, and enable it properly.
Okay, so some of it will be that secure that you'll keep it on site, but based on the categorizations, you'll use your cloud services probably in your hybrid mode just to get the benefits of that service.
So, to extension to Guy's point, basically, you know, with the data factory, data transformation features already available on the cloud, actually, you know, you can manage, restrict, give a right access, ensure that the right data goes to right people, and, you know, is managed and manipulated in the right way. Of course, you know, anonymization becomes critical here. But I think, again, to your point, cloud will become an enabler in my view again, because the ability, you know, to take all that data and able to, you know, mix and match it and assign it and ship it to the right people in the right way, in the right, you know, modules, security wise, and all those things taken care of. You know, doing it in-house is, you know, kind of impossible to drive those business value out of it. So organizations wants to, you know, drive business value, they have to go towards, you know, hybrid model, or, you know, have to figure out a cloud model for sure.
So we were talking about data and the algorithms, but your hybrid comment is very true, Ashish. So that hybrid adoption of services is going to be key to help enable customers make the most of what they can today. And it almost leads back to our transformation topic as a whole. So we're basically saying that if the customer wants to transform, we need to see some hybrid cloud adoption to help facilitate that.
Yep.
Cool. So from we're coming to towards the end of the time. So wanting to sum things up, we've talked about the huge topic of digital transformation. We've moved then on to talk about more about, is digital transformation really cloud? And let's have a poll very quickly. Are we really saying that the two are the same? I would like to say no. Does anyone disagree with me? The smiling faces I have on my screen, I will say that that is the case. So,
yes, I think so.
Excellent. So we do recognize that cloud is really important to help customers change today and to unlock some of the benefits that digital transformation offers. Security is a big topic, which we could spend hours talking about on our own, but GDPR is slightly recognized, guys. Are we going to say that as a summary?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, but not quite there yet, I think, in the minds of the customers in terms of how important it will be going forward to anything hosted anywhere in the world. And then data and the ability to use what customers have today is vital. The problem we see there is that most customers don't know what they've got access to today. And that would kind of say that there's a tremendous potential that they could unlock if only they could help, to Guy's point, in a hybrid mode to summarize and effectively analyze some of that data. Again, guys, is that kind of a nice statement to finish with?
Yeah, I think that's good.
I'll take the nods again as a positive thing. And that kind of sums things up from a topic. So in terms of closing thoughts, I'll let all of you have a single turn to have a closing remark for the session and for the viewers in general. Ashish, let's start with you.
Right. I think it was a good session in terms of, I think all of our perspectives are on a similar note, and you summarize it quite well. So I hope, the people who want to view it will be beneficial for them a lot.
Thank you, Ashish. Guy.
Yeah, so I think a lot of what we've spoken about is how is where do we go to, and how does that actually, how do we make it real? And I think everyone, it shows there's consensus in a lot of the views that we have. I think generally it's how we help customers make that happen, and how we really enable them. And cloud as enabler for digital, for example, is key. And I think one question on the GDPR, I think we've still got a lot to learn.
That's a good point, Guy. And Paul.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think that's been a good session. I think we've all pretty much said enable or enabler several times, and I think it's pretty much our point as a partner, consultant, or company to help customers enable themselves to actually look at the data, look at their roadmap, and look at their people to look at their processes. So I think that's pretty much the whole cloud journey at the moment.
Thanks, Paul. And I think that's a really good point. The partner community is there to help our customers make use of technology, but to also effectively do the adoption of that technology requires people and process elements. And we as partners are very experienced in that space to help enable our customers. Thank you, Paul. Guys, Ashish, Guy, Paul, I'd like to thank you very much. It's very much appreciate the time on the Unthink Google Hangout. Thank you very much, guys, and have a great rest of the day.
Brilliant. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Thank you all. Bye.